15 minutes or so, I thought I would take you through some of the key innovations that we're working on. We'll talk a bit about customer centricity and customer analytics use case, and I'll give you a demo. But before we start, look, every so often these trends come that create so much economic value for clients that they're going to happen, and they're game-changing. So analytics is one of those game-changing bets that we made several years ago. We've invested over $16 billion organically and inorganically to build up this portfolio, deliver value to our clients. And it's hard to really do justice to all the innovations that are going on inside of IBM. As you know, we've got the largest math department, we've got thousands of developers. But what I thought I would do is touch on some of the innovations that touch on some of the things you've heard this morning. Big data, real-time predictive, mobility, right? So we're going to get into that, starting with what is our point of view on smarter analytics. It's got to start with data, right? A lot of people get started when it comes to analytics. They'll do structured data warehouse, they'll do classic BI, they'll do data mining, and that's great. But that's the starting point. To really build accurate models, to really understand what's happening in your environment, it's about integration of data. It's all about tying, we've heard about structured, unstructured, we'll get into that more, but it's coming together of all sorts of data sources, all information, all perspectives, not only what happened in the past, what's happening right now, and what's likely to happen. And what you got to do is optimize all decisions, not only for the knowledge workers, but every person in the organization that is making decisions. So that's what we're going to get into more, starting with all data. So we talk about big data, right? Again, the word that keeps coming to mind for me is integration. Integration of structured and unstructured. Integration of data that's on-prem and data that's outside your enterprise, which more and more is increasingly important. Whether it's RFID tags or whether it's social conversations. It's analyzing data at rest as well as data in motion. So you need the ability to analyze all of this data and bring it all together. That's one type of integration. Second type of integration is integration of data with analytics. Analytics need to move where the data is, not the other way around. Integration of industry and domain expertise with analytic tools, so the focus is on driving business outcomes. That's what we're focused on. So if you look at a lot of the data, 80% is unstructured. We hear this, right? A lot of it is text. A lot of it is language, different languages. In order to understand that, you can't just parse the sentence and look for words that sound positive or negative, add them up and say that's a positive sentiment or negative sentiment. You need to understand cynicism. You need to understand emoticons. That's how people communicate emotion. You need to understand different cultural, differences, right? I mean, if you take the extreme example with Watson, we're working on oncology. You got to understand all those terms. So there's no company, I believe, or I know for a fact, that has invested as much in natural language processing, understanding unstructured data as we have, a key area of innovation for us. Then, last year at IOD, a lot of you you heard my good friend Jeff Jonas talk about entity analytics, right? He did a great job of talking about the puzzle pieces and how they come together. This whole notion of context accumulation. So when you hear the word fire, like he says, is it good, bad? Depends. If it's, a fire in your fireplace, it's not so bad, but fire in your home, that's a bad thing. You got to understand the context. Integration of that type of analytics with our data mining workbench is what we have in market today, a key innovation. Why? Who would care? Well, let me tell you who would care. If somebody is stealing somebody's identity and they're like siphoning money out of your bank account, you want to catch that before it happens. We're already working with Customs and Border Patrol, so they're actually taking photos of the license plates that are crossing the border, again, unstructured data. Running analytics in real time to figure out how often is this carbon crossing the border, who is it registered to, were they convicted of drug trafficking, who are they staying with. When you infuse entity analytics into that, you can also start to figure out, have they stolen somebody's identity, are they who they are they who they say they are. Coming together of entity and data mining workbench is a key innovation. And also, if a car is crossing the border, right, and you want to pull it over, making that decision a week later doesn't do you any good. I would argue even 5 minutes later, or 2 minutes, 2 seconds after the car has crossed the border, it's no good. It's useless. What you gotta do is catch it before it happens. And that brings you to the notion of real time. A lot of focus on real time, so use cases. In fact, one of the fascinating things, like when you look at the telco providers, 70% of the network data has got so much great information about customers, it doesn't even get analyzed. It's so much data, you can't even save all that for later analysis. It's finding that needle in the haystack, it's separating the signal from the noise, it's the veracity part of big data that's important. And some of these requirements, actually, your growth market customers are pushing us harder. They're saying that, if somebody drops, if they're seeing drop calls and they're my premium customer, I want to offer them something right now, within seconds of it happening instead of a week later. And they're right on. So when they looked at the predictive analytics we had, we said, hey, we can make it run in 1 second. You can run analytics in 1 second. No good. Too long. You got to do it in milliseconds. That's what we've done. That's what we have in market, and there are use cases for that popping up more and more. I mean, one use case that hits close to home for me is when our first daughter was born, right? She was a couple weeks premature, and she got diagnosed with jaundice. Now, I hope none of you have ever to go through that experience, because it's not a major deal, but for us, it was major. Leaving that little baby behind for 2 days broke our hearts. So when I see use cases like in Canada, working on a hospital in the neonatal unit, they're actually looking at these biometric data from babies, preborn babies, to look for patterns, predict infection before it happens. That's what it's all about. Now, we talk about decision for all people. Clear